Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Amber Valley series. There are 35 parishes in this beautiful slice of eastern Derbyshire. Here's one for your viewing pleasure. Welcome back to Amber Valley, everybody, where I'm hoping this episode is a lot better than the one you saw last week. It should be, in theory, but we'll soon find out. This is one that I've been avoiding for ages because it's frankly going to be quite difficult to cover. This is a place that everybody in Derbyshire seems to know because it's got a massive hall and people do come here on the regular to check it all out. Welcome to the parish of Kedleston. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Kedleston, Ketil's farm. Okay, so with just 5 left to go in Amber Valley, we're now into the ones that will be difficult to cover. As such, I've been avoiding this one for a long time because I knew it wasn't going to be easy. This is Kedleston, a parish that does have a village, although its location is kind of defined twice. To understand that, we first have to go back to medieval times. Kedleston, whose name is Old Norse and means Ketil's farm, was located in a different place to where the village is today. Only one feature of that original village now remains, the church. The rest was demolished by the Curzon family in order to build the massive Kedleston Hall. This would go on to be the residence of the Curzons for many, many years, but now the hall is not occupied by any families and is run by the National Trust. The hall sits in a huge parkland and both are open to visitors. As for the village, well, that was reconstructed on the park's edge, and it's essentially a collection of estate cottages and a few other buildings. So why then have I avoided this one for so long? After all, this all sounds like something we cover regularly, doesn't it? Well, the answer lies in time. Kedleston Hall isn't open every day, and so I had to plan my visit accordingly in order to capture everything that I wanted. But I did, so let's see what's here. We start with a short drive through the modern village of Kedleston. I say modern because centuries ago this is not what you'd have found in these parts. Kedleston was once sited at least a mile from where it currently is. The medieval village sat where Kedleston Hall is today, but was demolished by the Curzon family in order to build their grand mansion, which we'll see later. The village is now on the edge of the massive parkland which surrounds the hall. The man responsible for the village's relocation was one Nathaniel Curzon, who later became the first Baron Scarsdale. The village was populated by all of the estate workers, again not something terribly unusual in such a place. What few houses there are here are all designed in the same style and they were tenanted. Now, given the hall is no longer owned by the Curzon family, Kedleston's houses are all private properties. There aren't many features in the village itself. That said though, you would struggle to miss the gate lodges. They form one of the entrances to the parkland, which replaced the original village. Kedleston has 3 entrance lodges, 2 within the village and 1 on the road to Derby. These are the exit lodges these days, as the hall operates a one-way system for vehicles. We'll be exiting the parkland later using these very gates. Kedleston does have a former school. If you look to your right here, I'm sure you'll be able to make out which building it was. At the end of this lane there was also once a smithy. Both properties have now been turned into private residences. Let's make our way towards Kedleston Hall. As we do, let's talk about its connection to India. Raj Bhavan in Calcutta, known as Government House over there, once served as the official residence of the Governor-General of India. It was built along the lines of Kedleston Hall. In fact, many consider it to be an exact replica. By coincidence, a prominent member of the Curzon family, George, Lord Curzon of Kedleston, became Viceroy of India in 1899 and consequently was a resident of both houses. Calcutta, as a result, has a lot of Lord Curzon statues. Our first real landmark is this gate lodge. Known as the North Lodge, it takes the form of a triumphal arch, and it's the first of a series of gorgeous structures you'll encounter when you visit Kedleston Hall. It was built in 1760 and the wrought iron gates were later added by Benjamin Yates. The lodge was one of the first buildings to be completed at Kedleston. It has a tall carriage archway flanked by low pavilions and a Roman Doric pedimented entrance. It stands on a former rond point, essentially where a number of woodland rides began through the early 18th century park. So here we go up the drive towards Kedleston Hall through the huge parkland which would have once been the location of the original Kedleston village. Originally, Kedleston's grounds, gardens and parkland were designed by Charles Bridgman. The water features included a series of canals and geometric ponds which were later turned into serpentine lakes. In order to get to the house, and by the way this road is the only way to do so via vehicle, you have to cross a stretch of water. Do you remember Mercaston Brook from the Ravensdale Park video? Well, here in Kedleston, that same stretch of water becomes the pretty Cutler's Brook. Here it's much wider and much more powerful. Away to the right here there's a beautiful purposely designed cascade which is unmissable. Now to cross the water you have to use the Chatsworth Bridge, which itself features a waterfall under its stone arches. This is also known as Adam's Bridge too, and the reason why will become apparent shortly. Unusually for a bridge, it's a Grade 1 listed building. It's built of sandstone and was finished in around 1761. Not long after the bridge, Kedleston Hall comes into view. The current house was commissioned in 1759 by Nathaniel Curzon. The Curzon family, whose name originates in Notre Dame de Curzon in Normandy, have been in Kedleston since at least 1297. They lived in a succession of manor houses near to or on the site of the hall. The house was designed by the Palladian architects James Payne and Matthew Brettingham and was loosely based on an original plan by Andrea Palladio for Villa Mocenigo, a house that was never built. Its construction was overseen by Robert Adam, at the time a relatively unknown architect. It's he who the bridge is named after. Robert Adam was originally hired to design some garden temples that would enhance the landscape of the park. However, Curzon was so impressed with his designs that Adam was quickly put in charge of the construction of the mansion. Here is the park, by the way, as seen from the front of Kedleston Hall. The gardens and grounds today, over 200 years later, remain mostly unaltered. Parts of the park are designated as sites of special scientific interest, primarily because of the rich and diverse deadwood invertebrate fauna which inhabits the ancient trees. In 1939, Kedleston Hall was offered by Richard Curzon, the second Viscount Scarsdale, for use by the War Office. It was used in various ways during the war, including as a mustering point and an army training camp. It also formed one of the Y stations used to collect radio transmissions, which, if encrypted, were passed to Bletchley Park for decryption. Since 1977, Kedleston Hall has been unoccupied. On the death of Richard Curzon, expenses compelled the heir, his cousin Francis, to sign the property over to the care of the National Trust, and so it remains today. All Saints Church, right next to the hall, is the only remaining structure from the original medieval village of Kedleston. The building is redundant now, but this was the traditional burial place of the Curzons. The first mention of a church here was in 1198. The only remaining parts of that building are the Norman south doorway and the adjoining wall. Most of the present building dates from a 13th century rebuild. Between 1480 and 1510, the top of the tower was rebuilt in the perpendicular style, and between 1700 and 1720, decorative features were added to the eastern face. If you walk through the churchyard, you come to the pleasure grounds, which are largely the concept of Robert Adam. However, we have to also mention landscape gardener William Eames. He began work at Kedleston in 1756 and continued under Nathaniel Curzon until 1760. However, it was Adam who was the guiding influence. It was during this period that Bridgman's gardens were swept away in favour of a more natural-looking landscape. Another name of note is George Richardson. It was he who designed the hexagonal summer house in 1770 and the orangery in 1800. There's always a surefire way to know that spring has sprung when you see cherry blossom trees like that one right there. Doesn't that look fantastic? Kedleston Park is all about fantastic features like that, and trust me, it would take me a long time to walk around this entire area and show you everything. That's something you can do though. Come bring yourself here and have a walk around this fantastic place, and you'll see for yourself exactly what is on offer. There's plenty more than what I have shown you in this short episode. So now we're going to take a drive away from Kedleston via the exit, because there's one entrance and one exit to this place. We'll do a bit more filming in the car, and we'll head basically now away from the area and towards the A38 and back home. Difficult parish, finally covered. Now, as we already know, Robert Adam was responsible for some of the buildings around the hall. Indeed, he designed numerous temples and follies, but many were never built. Those that were include the Triumphal Arch and the two entrance lodges in the village. He also designed the fishing room, which many folk know as the boathouse, and it's one of the most notable of the park's buildings. Built in the neoclassical style, it's sited on the edge of the upper lake and contains a plunge pool and a boathouse below. Some of Adam's unexecuted designs for follies in the park rivaled in grandeur the house itself. For example, in 1760 he proposed a view tower which would have been 84 feet high and 50 feet wide. It would have been surmounted by a saucer dome and would have featured domed towers. In every sense, it would have been a small neoclassical palace itself. At least the village gate lodges were built, and it's via those we'll now drive to exit the parkland and move on to our last landmark. While most of the interesting stuff is in and around Kedleston Hall, it is worth investigating some of the other nearby features. And that brings us to the Kedleston Country House. This is a pub which began life in 1762 as the New Inn. It too was designed by Robert Adam. One of the most famous people ever to frequent it was footballer Brian Clough, former manager of Nottingham Forest and Derby County. Another was Trevor Harris, founder of the Derby Brewing Company and often known in pub circles as the godfather of brewing. The building was for a time derelict, but his company have since given this a makeover, and now the country house is once again open for business. And that'll do us for Kedleston, people. 4 left in Amber Valley now, and I'll see you down the road in the next one very soon. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.